friends, my name is Courtney from Courtney Sweets, and today we're going to make a delicious 1 pound meatloaf. I can't wait to get started, so let's go.
So first things first, I am going to chop up my onions as well as my parsley, and I like to use a mini food processor for this. You could also use a knife and cutting board if you don't have a food processor or even a blender. And I just pulse the onions quite a few times just to make sure that I'm getting a nice dice on them. I want them really tiny so they're not big huge chunks in the meatloaf, but they're still noticeable. I don't want them to be a puree. Then I'm also going to do the same thing with my fresh parsley. If you don't like parsley, you could use any other fresh herb that you prefer, like cilantro. If you don't like that, you could just omit it completely and not put any herbs in, but I just love that fresh bright green in there, as well as I think parsley adds flavor. Some people are kind of controversial on that it doesn't, but I think it does. So I'm adding some salt. I'm also going to add some granulated garlic. You could also have done fresh garlic in here, but I feel like granulated garlic just gives it a nice great flavor. Some pepper. We're using some oat milk because this is actually dairy free. We're a dairy free household. Some panko breadcrumbs, and then some ketchup. And yes, I did scrape that ketchup out. Then we're going to give it a big mix, and you just want to incorporate all of that so it gets like moistened. Then we're going to crack an egg, and you always want to do it on your counter. It cracks much more evenly. Then we're adding in our beef. I'm using 85% lean ground beef. You could use 80% or 93%. I find when you use anything higher than 85 though, it does tend to be a little bit more on the dry side. Now that we have all of that in there, I'm just going to mix it until it's combined. You do not want to over mix it because then it'll be really tough. So I just keep mixing it until it kind of forms into a shape, like I could feel the mixture is able to be formed and it's not as loose. And then also I do use gloves. I feel like it's a little bit more cleanly when I'm using raw meat products in the kitchen. Then we're going to put it into a baking dish. You could also use a baking sheet or even a loaf pan. I just like using a baking dish because I feel like it is better for presentation and it's easy to bring to the table. So now we're going to get started on our meatloaf glaze. I'm making it with ketchup, brown sugar, and Worcestershire sauce. And if you have an anchovy allergy, like a fish allergy, you can omit that. Some people can use soy sauce in it, so I will do that if we know someone has an allergy when they're eating at our home. I always like to consider allergies. We are also adding in some granulated garlic and then some black pepper. If you do not have granulated garlic, you could use powdered garlic. You may need to use a little bit less because the granulated garlic has a little bit more of a volume. Then we're going to mix that up and just make sure it's all incorporated and then dollop it right onto the meatloaf that we prepared. So what I'm doing is I'm actually putting this right on our meatloaf before baking it. I find that it gets really rich and thick and so super sweet, and I want it to taste like it's been cooking with the meatloaf as opposed to putting it on like the last 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't get a good depth of flavor in my opinion, but if you prefer to not have it so sticky and sweet, you can also do the 10 to 15 minutes prior. And then we're going to bake this on the entire time. We're not going to cover it, so it's going to really cook nice and evenly and without a cover. So do not cover it because then it will steam. And I think this looks good and we're about to bake.
So I have my oven preheated at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to bake this for 45 minutes or until the internal temperature is 160 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now, while the meatloaf is baking in the oven, I'm going to make our sides. I'm going to start off with mashed potatoes. I can't think of anything that is more classic than meatloaf and mashed potatoes. It just goes together. I'm going to be using a russet. Make sure it's nice and aligned. I pushed it back. And then we're going to do a medium chop on this. I want to make sure that they're cooking quickly. I don't have a ton of time when the meatloaf is cooking in the oven. It's about 45 minutes, but I do want to make sure everything is prepared and nicely plated together. So then we're just going to put that in some cold water on the pot in the stove, and then I do have it on a medium, almost high fire. Now while that's cooking and boiling away, I'm going to start my broccoli. I used some frozen broccoli that I had steamed prior, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of butter. This should cook quickly. I'm also using some grated Parmesan. We are dairy free, so this is follow your heart grated Parm. It works really well. And then I'm going to add in some granulated garlic. I love that granulated garlic, some salt, and then we're going to give that a toss. I also have some vegan butter, and then we're also using follow your heart vegan mozzarella. Then I'm going to stir that all together and it just gets so ooey gooey and delicious. And this is actually something I usually top up really fine and put on our pizza, which is so good for white pizza. Now I'm going to actually mash my potatoes. I like to let them steam off after I drain them, and then I put the butter in and mash that together. Once that's nice and mashed together, I'm going to add in my milk. I'm using oat milk, and you're just gonna mix that until it's nice and creamy and the texture you want. I like to add in some black pepper, seasoned salt.
So add another, maybe a half teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna mix this, let it sit for a minute, and then taste it, because I really want that to mix into the potatoes. So I'm gonna give it another taste test now that I added the salt. That is perfect. I think we added just enough, and I think it's ready to plate.
Try to go, Mom.
Thank you, babe. I'm glad you like it.
Look at how good.
Wow, it's hot.
There you go.
It's a little hot.
There you go.
Okay, babe, you can put it in the sink. You already used it. Thank you. We are all done making our delicious meal. I can't wait to dig right in. I'm going to taste the meatloaf with the mashed potatoes because that's just how I eat it.
Mashed potatoes and meatloaf.
It is so good. It is so flavorful. I love a moist meatloaf, so this is hitting the spot. I don't like just a meatloaf that's just all meat. I love my herbs and I love my onions. So it's really in there. Do you want to try some?
Yeah.
My little mini chef is gonna come and try some.
I don't like that ketchup.
He doesn't like the ketchup, so he's gonna try. It's so good. Just the meat with the potato.
Ha.
How is that? Was it good? How's it taste?
Good.
Flavorful? Like what? Meatloaf? Mama's meatloaf? Is it delicious? Yummy, yummy. You want more? Want some broccoli? Cheesy broccoli? You want some cheesy broccoli?
Maybe this one.
Okay. Oh, you want cheesy broccoli with mashed potatoes? Is that good? You want more? You like this dinner? We'll see you guys soon with another delicious tip or a recipe.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Well,